Individual minds and the collective mind. There are two kinds of minds. 1. Individual monadic minds, and 2. The collective mind, equating to the collection of all individual monadic minds. An individual monadic mind is a Fourier system, and so is the collective mind, just more complicated. The individual mind can create a space-time for itself, and so can the collective cosmic mind. In the former case, the resultant space-time is a subjective dream world that keeps changing from dream to dream, and even within a dream. In the latter case, by contrast, the created space-time corresponds to an objective world that stays largely the same from moment to moment, changed only by the various mathematical scientific forces that are in operation throughout it. When you dream, you inhabit your own space-time dream world, but this is not located in the same Fourier space-time world as the Fourier space-time created by the collective mind. Just as a subjective space-time dream world is located inside an individual mind, the objective space-time world is located inside the collective mind. Just as your subjective dream world is completely surrounded by, and contained by, your individual mind, so the physical universe is completely surrounded by, and contained by, the collective mind. In other words, the real universe is a mathematical hologram, located within a singularity. It does not have physical dimensions, it has mathematical dimensions. These mathematical dimensions are contained inside a dimensionless mind, just as we see in the case of the individual's dimensional dream world, except they are inside the universal mind, rather than merely inside an individual's mind. The private space-time, the dream world, is separate from the public space-time, the material world. An individual monad produces an individual space-time. The collection of all monads produces a collective space-time, the universe. There is a Fourier process for the individual, and a separate one for the collective. Labeling and tracking waves inside individual monads, and waves inside the collection of all monads, and inside individual space-times, and inside the collective space-time, and how they all interact, is where a lot of the difficulty lies as far as analysis goes, which is why it's much easier to use brute computing force to simulate the monadic system with all of its myriad waves. The mental ether. The ether is a mental, not physical, absolute reference frame. It is an axial reference frame, not interaxial. The ether is the mental singularity of frequency which is stationary at the center of the physical space-time universe. It controls everything in the universe. Just as we have a mind that controls a body, so the universe has a mind that controls its body, but the body in the latter case is the universe itself, and the mind is the cosmic mind, the collection of all minds. As above, so below. The material cosmos is controlled by the cosmic mind, which is made of countless individual monadic minds, each of which can link to an individual body in the universe and control it. The domain of light is the ether. The speed of light is fixed because the ether isn't in space-time at all, and is set exclusively by the mathematical principle of sufficient reason. The ether relates to the axial region of the Euler circle, while all space-time reference frames relate to the non-axial region, which are dependent on the axes. The invariant laws. Einstein claimed that the laws of physics are invariant, i.e. identical, in all inertial systems, non-accelerating frames of reference. If he meant that the Lorentz transformations apply to every non-accelerating frame of reference, then that's right, but it's certainly not right that every non-accelerating frame of reference can regard itself as stationary, as he claimed. Every non-accelerating frame of reference is in fact in an absolute state of motion, with respect to the absolute reference frame, ether, provided by the singularity. Moreover, it is obvious from the Lorentz transformations that the domain of light is not part of space-time, and, therefore, that different laws of physics apply there. In fact, the singularity is purely mathematical, not scientific. There is no friction in the domain of light, no space, no time, no matter, no net mass. Light is the domain of mind. Mind is a friction-free, zero-viscosity superconductor that exists at absolute zero. Which is why science knows nothing about it. The equations that drive light are in fact exactly those from which those that drive non-light are derived. The space-time world of matter, of non-mind, differs from the world of light simply by virtue of being the interaxial domain of non-orthogonal phase, yet that difference produces a completely different physics, Hence Einstein is wrong as a matter of fact. Strange dimensionality and on the circumference of a circle can only go backwards or forwards, just as on a straight line. Therefore, a circle is one-dimensional, just like a straight line. Complex numbers have a different dimensionality from real numbers. Each point in the complex plane is defined by a single number, a complex number, but this has two parts, a real part and an imaginary part, a plus by. Therefore, the complex plane is not two-dimensional, but one-dimensional. The real plane has two real dimensions, but the complex plane is actually a one-dimensional complex line. So, a complex circle is still one-dimensional. The false theory, Einstein's special theory of relativity, is unquestionably false. An effective analysis of its errors is provided here. http://worknotes.com/physics/special-relativity/twin-paradox/htmlpage9.aspx. Print equals true. As you would expect, science refuses to engage in any debate about one of its most cherished theories. It's just like a religion. It does not accept criticism. Only groupthink is permitted in science. The Lorentz theory, which uses the same mathematics as Einstein's theory but with a different physical interpretation, is correct, except for its conception of the ether. Einstein was right that no ether of the type envisaged by Lorentz exists. The true ether is much more radical. It is the ether of light itself. It's exactly because light is the absolute ether that the speed of light is absolute. What could be more obvious? But not to scientists. Planck's constant physicists had assumed that atomic vibrations were continuous, that is, they could vibrate at any frequency. Planck decided to assume that atoms could only vibrate at certain frequencies that were whole number multiples of some base frequency, which he called h. In other words, atoms could vibrate at the frequency, or 2h, or 3h, but not 2.5h. It turns out that atoms, and a lot of other stuff, can only take certain specific values. In physics, we say that atomic vibrations are quantized. Dashavary Thomson Planck proposed that a vibrating atom had a fundamental frequency and could oscillate only at this frequency, or at whole number multiples of it. Hence the radiation it emitted could only have certain energies based on the equation E equals nhf1, where E is energy, h is Planck's constant, f1 is the fundamental frequency, and n is a positive integer. It's impossible for an atom to vibrate at below this frequency. The atom necessarily has a ground energy level of E equals hf1. If f1 equals 1, h is the base frequency of nature, and a, the energy associated with the base frequency, is the base energy. Quantization. Starting in 1900, experimental results started forcing physicists to quantize physical quantities that are continuous in classical physics. Quantizing oscillator energy, 1900. Planck quantized the energy levels in atomic harmonic oscillators to explain radiation emitted from a glowing mass. His energy levels are given by n equals nhf, where n equals 0, 1, 2. The n refers to the nth state of vibration, f is the frequency of the lowest energy state, h is a constant called the Planck constant, and n is the energy of the nth level of vibration. Michael Rue is the minimum energy if the speed of light c equals 1 and c equals f right double angle bracket, then 1 equals f right double angle bracket. If f equals 1 then right double angle bracket equals 1. The fundamental wave is a sine or cosine with frequency 1 and wavelength 1. 1 is the fundamental frequency of nature. The lowest possible frequency. 1 is the fundamental wavelength of nature and is the highest possible wavelength. As frequency increases, wavelength automatically and proportionately decreases. If E equals hf, then, when f equals 1, E equals h. In other words, Planck's constant, the quantum of action, is the lowest possible energy in the universe. However, since we can have positive and negative energy and real and imaginary energy, we can balance all energies to 0, making 0 the net energy, hence the lowest possible energy, and the compulsory ground state energy of the universe. E equals h is the smallest amount of energy possible, the energy of a single wave cycle. We proportionately multiply the energy as we multiply the numbers of wave cycles. Harmonics and overtones. A harmonic is an integer, whole number, multiple of the fundamental frequency of a vibrating object. An overtone is any resonant frequency above a fundamental frequency, and may or may not be a harmonic. A non-harmonic overtone is one where it is not a whole number multiple of the fundamental frequency. We define all sine waves with whole number frequencies as harmonics or harmonic overtones of the fundamental sine wave, which has a frequency of 1 and a wavelength of 1. Non-harmonic sine waves are impossible since they are inherently unstable, hence instantly self-destruct. Harmonic reality Fourier analysis is a basic engineering implement for determining the frequency components of an arbitrary time-varying function. In such analysis, the lowest frequency is called the fundamental frequency, and the high frequencies, which are integral multiples of the fundamental frequency, are known as harmonics. For a periodic function, a Fourier series representation of a function is employed to determine the amplitudes of the fundamental and harmonic frequencies present in a waveform. A Fourier series is therefore sometimes called a harmonic series. Representation of a signal as a sum of harmonic oscillations is defined as a resolution into its spectrum, which is the sum of individual harmonic components of the signal. The spectrum of a signal is often more informative than its time representation. Fourier analysis is also applicable to non-periodic signals by assuming the period of analysis, not that of the signal in question, to be infinitely long. This leads to the concept of Fourier transform, in which all frequencies are present, instead of just those which are integral multiples of the fundamental frequency. VK Canna, digital signal processing. Regardless of its shape, any periodic complex waveform can be mathematically resolved to its individual components. The fundamental frequency and its harmonic frequencies. The fundamental frequency can be called the first harmonic. It is the lowest or base frequency, on which the complex waveform is constructed. Each of the further harmonics operates at a frequency that is an integer, whole number, multiple of the fundamental frequency. If the fundamental frequency is 1, then the additional harmonics are multiples of the fundamental frequency. 2, 3, 4, etc. This is demonstrated in the following diagram. Periodic signals have a frequency spectrum consisting of harmonics. If the fundamental frequency, first harmonic, is at 1000 Hz, the second harmonic will be at 2000 Hz, the third harmonic at 3000 Hz, and so on. The frequency spectrum can be regarded in two ways. 1. As continuous, with all frequencies except the harmonics set to 0. 2. As discrete, i.e. only defined at the harmonic frequencies. Therefore, the frequencies between the harmonics can be thought of as existing, but as having a value of 0, or simply not existing at all. Either way, they do not make a contribution.